What's up, savvy expats? In today's video, we're addressing the top concerns that expats have about moving to the Philippines. This is probably one of the most valuable videos I'll ever put out, so stick to the end. Alright, without wasting time, let's get into it. So kicking off this list, the first and biggest concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines is the healthcare. What happens if I get sick? Which hospital will I go to? Will I be able to get my hands on my medications? What health insurance should I go for? These are all questions expats are concerned about when moving to the Philippines. And rightfully so. The Philippines isn't exactly synonymous with being a place with exceptional healthcare. First off, let's address the concerns around hospitals. In the Philippines, there's a private and public sector for hospitals. You'll find that the private sector entails the higher end and international standard hospitals often found in the bigger cities like Manila or Cebu City. For most expats, especially when older, this is the best type of hospital to opt for when getting treatment. Otherwise, you have the public sector for hospitals often found in the provinces of the Philippines for a lower economic class. You'll find that some of these hospitals are understaffed and under-equipped. So I'm assuming that you already made up your mind between the two. You're most likely gearing towards the private hospitals. In that case, some of the best private hospitals in the Philippines include the Medical City Hospital in Pasig, Metro Manila, St. Luke's Medical Center in Bonifacio Global City aka BGC, Makati Medical Center in Makati, Metro Manila, and Manila Doctors Hospital in Ermita, Metro Manila. Now when it comes to getting medications in the Philippines, this depends on a couple of factors. First off, it depends on your prescribed medications. If you have special medications, depending on what it is, it may or may not be available in the Philippines. Some medications are only found in the hospitals in Western countries. And second, it also depends on where you live. If you live in the bigger cities like Manila or Cebu, where the hospitals are more advanced, then you're more likely to find your prescriptions. If you're out in the province, however, chances are special medications won't be available. And for the last question, we'll answer, what health insurance should I go for? So technically, expats aren't required to have health insurance in the Philippines, but without it, procedures will be very costly. Again, you have private and public types of health insurance. If you're not employed by a Philippine company, which most of you guys aren't, then you're gonna go for the private health insurance. Public health insurance would be found with companies like PhilHealth. This is what the locals use for around $75 per year. As for private health insurance, you have ACS, AXA, Cigna, Kaiser, etc. These private health insurance plans start at around $765 per year. Moving on to the second concern expats have about the Philippines, that's the visas. You may be wondering, how long can I stay in the Philippines on a tourist visa? Or what visa should I get to retire in the Philippines? First off, when traveling in the Philippines under a tourist visa, the first 30 days here are free. You can extend your visa up to 6 months under a single transaction. It costs $270 for visa required nationals and $220 for non-visa required nationals. The maximum stay given to non-visa required nationals is 24 months or around 2 years. I believe once this period ends, you have to exit the country to reset the count. As for retiring in the Philippines, the best visa option to opt for is the SRRV retirement visa. This stands for Special Resident Retirees Visa, and it gives you the right to stay indefinitely in the Philippines. So how can you get this SRRV visa? If you have a pension and you're 50 years old or older, the required deposit is $10,000. This is in addition to a monthly pension of $800 for a single person or $1,000 for a couple. Now, if you don't have a pension and you're 35 years old to 49 years old, then it's required that you deposit $50,000 US. That's the basic details, but if you want me to give you a full in-depth video on Philippine visas, then be sure to give this video a like and let me know in the comments down below. Moving on to the third question that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is the banks to use. So expats can open up an account with national banks such as the Philippine National Bank, Metro Bank, and the Bank of the Philippine Islands. Or you can use international institutions like Citibank, Bank of America, and HBSC. What I suggest is that you open up both. For us, we opened up a BPO account and we also use Citibank. Now moving on to the fourth concern that expats have about the Philippines, that is the racism. Whether you're black, white, Hispanic, you may be concerned about how you'll get treated in the Philippines. Well, I'll tell you right now, no matter where in the world, racism seems like it's pretty much everywhere. You already know, no matter what race you are in the US, all races pretty much get discriminated one way or another out there. But in regards to the Philippines, it depends on how you define racism. If you define racism as getting charged more because you're an American, then I suppose Filipinos are racist. But then again, I believe that this is more of a greed thing than it is racism. I wouldn't totally consider it racism because keep in mind, I'm Filipino and even I get overcharged. They know that my family isn't from this country, so they can overcharge us wherever we go. So this is really a greed problem more than anything. Another reason some Filipinos may come off as racist is because some of them have perceptions about foreigners without even meeting them. I can't put a label on every Filipino for this, but a lot of them throw around the N-word like nothing here. I was at the mall one time and a group of kids were just nonchalantly throwing around the N-word. I was absolutely blown away by this. I thought to myself, come to Chicago and say this and that's guaranteed the last word that'll ever come out of your mouth. But I want to assure you guys, they probably don't know any better, and 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get treated worse because of your race. As a matter of fact, whether you're white or black, they're going to treat you even better because they know you're coming from a country with money. I've seen Filipinos treat foreigners better than Filipinos. So it's more of a social class thing than it is a race thing here. People in the US can discriminate you because of your skin color. People in the Philippines can discriminate you because of the clothes you wear and what's in your wallet. That's the most simple way I can put it. Moving on to the 5th concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is buying property. As you know, expats can't buy property in the Philippines. You can only put the property under your Filipino spouse's name or just buy a condo. But there is a workaway around this. You can set up a corporation in the Philippines and put your property under that corporation. Then you can split the corporation 50-50 between you and your wife in case anything happens. If you're curious about this, email me at evan@thesavvyexpat.com and I'll get you in contact with our attorney connections here. Moving on to the 6th concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is how much is enough. You may be curious of what budget to bring with you to the Philippines and how much is enough. Generally, I say that if you're living in the province modestly, you can live on $1,500 per month. If you're looking to live in Metro Manila or a major city, expect to bring $3,000 and up. But for most people, $2,000 to $3,000 per month will suffice and provide a much more flexible lifestyle as opposed to $1,000 per month budget. Now for the 7th concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is who to trust. If you're coming with your spouse or going to live with your spouse, then right there, that's already one person to trust. After all, if your spouse is already familiar with life in the Philippines, you should be fine. But when it comes to finding people you can trust, understand that you will have a lot of acquaintances here, but they won't necessarily be in your friend group that you can trust. Only a select few will be in your close friend group. This is what we personally experienced. We've made countless acquaintances here, but 90% of them are not in our close friend circle. It's not that we're not friendly, but I'd say after 3 years, we narrowed down our friend group to around 10 people that we can trust. We just want to keep people around us that we can trust. So other than that, trusted relationships is only going to come with you meeting new people here and developing relationships as time goes on. But as for now, you always got me. Moving on to the 8th concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is the schools. If you're moving to the Philippines with your children, a huge concern for you may be your child's education. If you're from a Western country, my best suggestion is that your kids attend an international school here. These places are found in places like BGC, Alabang, and Makati. To name a few, you have ISM or the International School of Manila in BGC, BSM, the British School of Manila, also in BGC, as you can see kind of behind me. Then you also have MIT International School in Alabang. Now for the 9th concern expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is of course the safety. As I've mentioned in the past, the Philippines is not as dangerous as many make it out to be. As a matter of fact, I find that more Filipinos that have left the Philippines say that the Philippines is dangerous even though they're born and raised here than Americans say it is. If you're aware of your surroundings, avoid sketchy areas, and you don't flaunt your wealth, then you'll be fine. Moving on to the 10th concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is the Wi-Fi connection. If you're working online and remotely, then this is very important for you. Out in the provinces, Wi-Fi is not as strong. strong. But when it comes to living in the major cities of the Philippines like Manila or Cebu, the Wi-Fi is much stronger, faster, and more reliable. For us, we live in BGC and we get 4G, 5G connection here, which is pretty fast. Now for the 11th and last concern that expats have about moving to the Philippines, that is the heat. It gets hot in the Philippines, you need an AC, boom, done. So there you have it, Tippy expats. Those are the top concerns that expats have about moving to the Philippines that we just addressed. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me at my email down below or just leave a comment. If you found this video to be of value, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And so thank you for watching, Savvy Expats, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.